careful. This rotted baddie is ready for battle. Here's a look at the Mattel, He-Man, and the Master Universe New Eternia Battle Armor Skeletor. This Masterverse action figure of Skeletor is the New Eternia edition of the Lord of Destruction with battle armor. With the high level of detail collectors have come to expect, this 7-inch scale figure has 30 points of articulation and comes with removable armor, shoulder pads, helmet, skirt armor, and chest piece with clean and damaged battle plates that are interchangeable. An axe and sword complete his conflict readiness. Not only does Skeletor live for conflict, but he dresses for it as well. Just before we get a closer look at the brand new Mattel, He-Man, and Master Universe Masterverse New Eternia Battle Armor Skeletor, I have no idea how I'm going to fit that all in the title. I'll worry that a little bit later. What I'll worry about right now, though, is telling you just how tall the figure stands. He doesn't have his helmet on yet. For right now, at least, the figure's going to stand at 6.5 inches in height, or the brand new Battle Armor Skeletor is 17 centimeters tall. I already have a Battle Armor He-Man. You want to see him with Skeletor? I thought you would. Here's what the figure looks like with the earlier looked at Masterverse New Eternia Battle Armor He-Man. So scale-wise, they're about standing the same. Here's bringing in a couple of other New Eternia cronies of Skeletor. Here's what he looks like with both Trapjaw and Triclops. Both start with Tra. Here's also as well a couple of Skeletors for comparisons. He is certainly one of the tallest Skeletors around. If you were to compare him, say, for example, against the Revelation Skeletor, the Revolution Skeletor, or the whatever the second season was of Skeletor. And here's also as well what he looks like with the Barbarian Skeletor that was also part of the Masterverse line as well. I hope you have interest to pick up this figure, and I hope that when you pick the figure up, you also remember to go back and look at the side compartment, because located inside that was a tiny little bag. And what was inside the tiny little bag, you may all ask? Well, you came included with, first of all, a sword. The sword itself looks like it's been painted with the blade in silver, while the guard and hilt has been left behind all in just black plastic. Show you guys what that looks like. I feel like I keep looking at a face, but I don't think it's a face. I think it's actually maybe a bird's nose. You can see there's like a little beak right there. Does fit into his hands. The figure also comes included with the swappable chest piece. If you are familiar with the Battle Armor variety characters, then you know that when you flip the switch, although you're not going to be able to do it this time around, this is all manual, the switch would then flip, and then you'd be able to see battle damage on these characters. They have done the... You have to do all the work. Essentially, they're giving you the instructions. They don't even really give you the instructions. They give you the tools, then you have to do everything yourself, sort of like buying things from IKEA. You can see that there's some cut-in marks here for the battle damage variety plate, while the cleaner plate is currently housed inside the torso of Skeletor. We're going to be fixing that shortly. So the sword and the plate were part of that bag. Don't lose the bag. Don't throw away the packaging without first checking that side compartment. You're going to be all sad about it. You won't also be sad by the fact the figure comes included with this pretty cool looking battle axe. It's a somewhat similar painted silver, although if you're looking at it, it almost looks like the blade of the sword is a little bit darker of a silver, and it also is a little bit more shinier too. I do like the look of the battle axe quite a lot. It's not a double-sided axe, but it can inflict just as much damage. As you can see, it has a point on one side, and all this sort of... Ooh, just look at that. I mean, I wouldn't want to make the joke. I know I keep doing that over the years. I mean, people get tired of that. But hopefully you won't get tired by all the detail that Mattel put into this. Little scratches, little chipped-in marks to the metal. That's a nice-looking battle axe. There is no storage space that I can find on the figure, so if you're flipping this guy around, there's no loops or anything like that. You could take the sword and holster that on the side. I don't know why would be the noise I would make. And there's no holsters on the side of his skirting either. You really only have the choices to have him holding the sword and the axe, or don't hold the sword and the axe. There's no third option. This isn't like one of those spiritual questions where you have to kind of think really deep into it. You either have the choice of displaying him with it, or you don't. If you do want to display him with both of it, luckily he has gripping hands on both sides, so you can have the battle axe in one side. You, of course, take the axe, take the sword, and the sword also fits into his hands. The plastic that they've used for the hand fingers are actually pretty soft, so it's very easy to get him to wield both weapons. Let's take those for right now, move them off to the side. Figure also, like I said, does come included with the plate, but the other thing that he also has as well is this really cool looking helmet. The helmet does use this metallic purple that makes many various appearances here on the front of his torso, the shoulder pads and the lower skirting as well, not to mention pretty shiny looking purple boots, all match the same purple. I love the fact that they gave him the helmet here. Now, the helmet, like I said, is removable. You probably can already see the proof in the pudding. Most people probably will end up displaying this with this on top of Skeletor's head because it does give him a finished look. This guy does not have, for example, a hood. So when you either have the choice of either displaying him obviously with the helmet looks just though so cool. Or again, if you leave it off, he does though have chainmail on top of his head. I wish he had kind of come and also included with the hood as an alternative option. Just because when I think of Skeletor, and especially even the battle armor, he always tends to have a hood. I guess they did give him one next best thing to that. The chainmail does look good on Skeletor. You can see actually the way that the individual links are all linked together. Nice sculpting overall there by Mattel. One idea I certainly did have in mind, and I'm going to show you as well what my logic was. I'm going to bring in the Skeletor. Now, this was again like the Barbarian Skeletor that had a very similar style of helmet as this one. It also had the bearded chin. He did also come include some other parts that if you want to swap them out, make them look a little bit more like classic Skeletor, you also could do that. And that's basically the way I've been having my Skeletor displayed on the shelf. You could really also use this head sculpt. The only problem with it, though, is first of all, I mean, obviously anybody looking at this would say that a superior head sculpt is found on the shoulders of the battle armor Skeletor than what we get with this one. If you did want the hood, though, for all intents and purposes, you could pop the head off. Pop it off the ball joint. Mattel, I don't know if they had this plan in mind that if you wanted to mix and match the head sculpts, but they are using, in fact, the same ball joints. Pop that off. So if you wanted to, you could, for all intents and purposes, use another Skeletor head. The problem with it, though, is it looks like it's a toddler's head on top of an adult body. It's doable, but it's barely doable. It just looks almost more laughable than anything else. But there's that option available if you want to. Pop that back off. Something so satisfying, I don't know, about popping these off the ball joints. Pop the head back in place. Outside of the fact that this Skeletor does also have the chainmail hoodie, one thing I really like about him is the fact that they give him a very long chin. That is a perfect looking Skeletor face if you ask the guy behind the camera. He's got these tiny little red peepers there also in the sockets of his eyes. You may have already noticed also the fact that this figure does have an open and closed jaw. How much more do I need to sell you guys on how cool? That is probably one of the best Skeletor heads we've ever gotten. Just happens to be from the battle armor. Now again, if you want to have the figure displayed with, you can. If you want to display it without, you can as well. I think, though, it does finish the look nicely, even though I'm more kind of akin to liking characters like Skeletor with a hood. I got to say, like, the helmet works really well, specifically because he's a battle armor Skeletor. You could also, too, he does have these large shoulder pads on either sides of his arms, or just above his arms, obviously. He's got these large spikes. These spikes, I will say, are not soft plastic. You will feel them every time you try to move this figure around. Luckily, though, they are removable. So I know with the original battle armor Skeletor, he didn't have shoulder pads. So Mattel did think that out, because if you want to just remove this right now, if you look at the side, they're actually slotted in place. I do think like the shoulders add to it, but if you want this to look a little bit more like the original vintage Skeletor, or even the one that we got from Origins, it's just a case of actually you grab onto the shoulders here. And the first time I did this, I sort of felt like it was going to hold on for dear life, and I was going to ultimately start to stress the plastic. As far as I know, I haven't done it yet, but these basically just detach. Just wiggle them back and forth. Here we go. You just remove it from one side. And yeah, we're going to do it on the other side too. Just, again, I can't stress this. If you don't want stress in this plastic, just do these very slowly. Don't just yank them off. You can see the way that the lip sticks up like this. There has to be enough, obviously, the slot inside that opening here, that obviously, yanking it too much. If it's really hung up and stuck in there, you don't want to warp and stress the plastic. But these do pop off, so if you did want to have Skeletor kind of with the sleeveless look, you can pull that off as well. And just going back and put the helmet back in place. Not honestly sure which way I like the look for the character more. The shoulders do, I think, add a little bit more to the pizzazz of the character. But, again, if you want this to look more like the original vintage Skeletor, sleeveless really is the way to look. Now, obviously, when the armor piece, the way that this works, you got this really cool looking kind of bat motif that he has on the front. This actually is sculpted, if you believe me. Please believe me. This actually isn't just printed in place. They have outlined this nicely in a neon or bright fluorescent green. And of course, you got the purple on the inside of this. It works sort of the same way as He-Man's did. When we looked at He-Man's, Although I will, let me correct myself by saying this. He-Man, you actually had to detach everything to get to the back of this because it is next to impossible to pull the plate off. So He-Man's, I will say, it was different. Skeletor's is a little bit easier. Skeletor's, you don't have to pull anything, dismantle anything at all in order to get the plate out. You just kind of get your finger in there, and you just pull it from the corner. Just attach it. And you can kind of see on the back of this, there's these little lips of plastic on the front and on the back, on the top or on the bottom. And those just slot in place here. So you can get, let me just put the figure down here for a second. Showing you guys the two different looks. So again, one is the cleaner plate, one is the damaged plate. You guys know by now what Battle Armor, Skeletor, and He-Man are all about. And all you basically do then is just you fit this back in place. Now, you don't have to necessarily, I find it does help, honestly, if you do put it on an angle, but I think you kind of arrive at the same results. Or you can also put it down this way. This might even, in fact, be the easiest because you have to kind of get it around this skull shape right here. So kind of tuck it down on a corner like this. And then when everything is kind of lined up, you just push them in. That's all you have to do. You get the battle damage look that way. Outside of the purple, we've already talked extensively about. You got some really extensive sculpting here, too. I love the fact that they actually start in the middle here with a skull, and then they branch things off, excuse me, with these tiny little bones. They're all kind of interlocking one another. It just kind of gives a little bit more to the motif of the character. Of course, you got yourself the Havoc Staff. Now, the character doesn't have the Havoc Staff, but he has sort of the next closest thing. He's got a little Havoc Staff motif on the front of his belt buckle. He's got the loincloth. He's got the skirting on the sides here as well. If you did want to, you could take the body apart and you could remove the skirting. Essentially, what you'd only be getting underneath is a silver belt and then a silver chainmail cloth. I don't know if I could ever see myself really ever wanting to remove it, but I mean, if you did want to, it just attaches on the back here. See, basically, there's a peg right there. You just detach the two. But the only thing about it, though, is I've always done this. I've detached these, and they're always the hardest things to put back in place because they never seem to stretch back over. Basically, you would just attach that, and underneath that, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. But underneath that, you basically would have like a silver belt. Want to see it? There it is right there. A silver belt, and then the chainmail skirting. Not the most interesting things. Like, at least if it was black, or at least if it was purple or dark purple, I think there would be a little bit more push in the direction of wanting to remove it. But there's just so much more interesting stuff going on here. Why would you want to take the belt skirting off? That's my feelings. Down below, again, we've got some really nice metallic purple that they've used here. He still has the monster feet, which is one thing that's carried over with pretty much all the Skeletors. Although this time around, he does actually have boots. Most of the Skeletors usually have had bare feet. Now, for the figure's articulation, Battle Armor Skeletor does have, again, that ball joint. Whether it be easier, maybe we'll just remove this right now. Does have the ball joint, so yeah, you can rotate the head all the way around. Just one last time. Everybody, sit around the fireplace. Let's get a good look at Skeletor's face. Something to be said, though, about, again, the way they've sculpted the chain, how it sticks out like this. It just is one of the best Skeletor head sculpts we have ever gotten, in my feelings at least. Again, you got the articulation there in the mouth. The head does look up, that high, looks down. You can also move it back and forth as well. The upper torso is going to be on what seems to be a ball joint. It kind of can move up and down, but mostly it only swivels back and forth. Shoulders come out at 90 degrees, a little bit more than that. You can take the arms and rotate them. You can rotate them all the way around. They're a little hung up on mine. Figure does have a swivel in the bicep, a double hinge on the elbow, but with the size of the guns that Skeletor is packing here, it's next to impossible to get any use out of a double hinge. If anything, you're only getting a hinge from the bottom area here. You're maybe only getting just a little bit from the forearm, but that's a pretty large-sized bicep. Maybe not as big as He-Man's, but it's still no slouching on Skeletor. Of course, the hands do rotate all the way around. There's a hinge back and forth there as well. The legs do split out, and the way they've actually designed the skirting here, the splits on the sides, allow more than enough for splits on Skeletor's legs. You can take the legs and move forward. You can move them back. There's a swivel 3/4 of the way up the thigh. There's a cut that allows the leg to rotate back and forth. There's a double hinge on the knee. Articulation is mild here on the boots, although it looks like the boots are separately attached, obviously, but you can't really do too much when it comes to wiggling these back and forth. Ankle pivots move up and down this way. You can also, of course, rock the ankles this way as well. Figure does have, just in case you're curious, double peg holes on the bottoms of his feet. Nice figure. Not at all, looking at this figure and initially getting this guy out of the packaging, I knew right away I was going to love him, and spending the hour or so, it might have even been longer than that, just playing around with the figure. I really like what they've done here. Now, they have, of course, taken the concept of battle armor Skeletor, and I feel like they've been a little bit more adventurous with the design of the character. A battle armor He-Man certainly kind of kept things a little bit more simpler into the basics of what battle armor He-Man would have been in the first place. Skeletor sort of takes the ideas and branches from that, makes it a little bit more elaborate. Of course, the idea of having removable shoulder pads was a smart idea on Mattel's part. So if you don't like the shoulder pads, I'm still not sure which way I'm arriving at, whether I do like it or not. At least you can remove them, and that's a good thing as well. Truth be told, though, it would have been nice if Skeletor could have come included with an extra swappable hooded piece. So if you don't like the helmet, for example, and you don't like necessarily the fact that he has the chainmail hoodie, they could have given you maybe a third option. And maybe it could have just been something that could have been packed away in the baggie, along with the sword, along with, again, like that swappable chest piece plate. Something, again, just to arrive to the idea that this is a true battle armor Skeletor. The more I look at it, though, the more I think the chainmail, I'm kind of warming up to it. I like the look of it. Yes, it's not the traditional looking Skeletor, but it's a pretty good looking Skeletor. The battle armor variety, I'm glad to pick this one up to display it along with He-Man. By far, for me at least, the best larger scale Skeletor we've ever gotten from Mattel. I would say, for me at least, the most anticipated figure that Mattel announced for their Masterverse He-Man line was Battle Armor Skeletor. Seeing how good this guy looked online, I was curious to see if he was going to look just as good in hand, and he does. Hopefully this video has been able to show you guys just how stellar this figure looks in sculpt, not to mention all the things that he comes included with. I would say, though, he's not perfect, but he's pretty close. Things that I may have changed to him is I would have maybe made the handle for the battle axe just a tad bit longer so he could properly hold it with both of his hands. Maybe a holster or a place to store the sword either on the back of his body or on the side of his skirting. But there's nothing really at all I would change to the head sculpt. I know, though, initially I said in this review I would have loved that this guy could have come included with a black cloak hood, something to go over top of it so it looked more reminiscent of classic Skeletor. But the more, though, I look at this, the more I realize it's a battle armor Skeletor. It doesn't have to necessarily follow the same rules of a regular Skeletor. They gave him a hood, but they gave him this time a chainmail hood, and it does work quite well for the figure. You can either go this route or obviously beeline it back to the battle armor helmet, which both look good on the figure. Like with He-Man, though, he does have the swappable plate. It's a little easier, though, to accommodate that with Skeletor. You don't have to futz as much with it to remove the plate. It's pretty easy to pop in place. Yeah, all in all, head to toe, this is a fine-looking Skeletor. Have you guys had the chance to pick this one up? Let me know down below in the comments section, or based on this review. Is this one that's already now on your radar? Let me know what you guys think of them. In the meantime, if you guys did enjoy this video, do it a solid, throw it a like. You guys want to stick around for more so? I hope so. Hit the subscribe, turn on the bell, come back please. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.